Just when you thought math could not get any more fun, here comes the day 2 video for solving trigonometric equations. And there's exactly nothing different than what we were doing in the first round, except that this is going to have a little bit more factoring and just take it up a notch because we are honors math. So same mentality as yesterday. I'm going to try to get the trig function alone. Then I'm going to go to my unit circle and find the places that meet the criteria. I'm going to give my answers in radians and degrees. I'm going to keep in mind that if I have a square, I'll probably be factoring or using plus minus square root. And in this case, since I don't have a plane tangent along with my tangent squared, I'm expecting to just use square root. So let's have at it, friends. I'm going to move that 3 over by addition. Now I'm going to employ my square root sign. So this side will just become the tangent of x, and this side will become plus or minus the square root of 3. That feels familiar. It might have been on yesterday's as well. I apologize. So if that is what I'm looking for, I have a tangent value right here at 60 degrees. So I'm on my unit circle at this point. So 60 degrees is one of my options, which is pi thirds. And then with tangents, the other option is always 180 straight across from it. So right down here, root 3 is my tangent value again at 240 degrees, which is 4 pi thirds. Now, I also have to do negatives because I got plus or minus. So over here at 120 degrees, I see that I have a place that suits the equation, and that is going to be my 2 pi thirds. And straight across from that, I also have a negative square root 3 as a tangent value. So 300 is a legitimate option, otherwise known as 5 pi thirds. So that's a lot of answer options, so I want to make sure that I get all of them. And then radians and degrees doubles my money. Okay, ooh, look at this. I've got a cosine squared and a regular cosine, so I'm going to need to factor. Again, think back if you want to looking at this in a more algebra 1 kind of way, and think about how you would factor that. You would need a 1 at the end, so there's only one way to get that. You need a 2 at the beginning, so I'd have a 2 cosine x and times a 1 cosine x. Now, thinking of FOIL, my outside's going to be a 2 and my inside's going to be a 1, and I need it to be a positive 1 combo. So I need my 2 part to be a positive, and then this minus 1. So I'll have 2 cosine x minus 1 cosine x when I do my outside and inside. Alrighty, so since that has to equal 0, my 0 property rule says that either 2 cosine x minus 1 has to be 0, or the cosine x plus 1 has to be 0. So just like we would have done in Algebra 2, we would have had 2y minus 1 or y plus 1, and we would have said, oh, then y could be negative 1 or a positive half. That's basically where we're heading right now. Because here, in order for this to be true, 2 cosine x would equal 1 when I add that over, and then cosine x would equal 1/2 when I divide, just like up here. Here, in order to get the cosine alone, I have to move the 1 over by subtraction. So I still have that same option. But the only real new thing is now I go to the unit circle and figure out where are these two statements true. So the cosine will be 1/2 at this point. I've got a cosine or x value of 1/2. So that's going to mean 60 degrees or pi thirds. And the other place I have a cosine value of 1/2 is right down here. And so that's going to be at 300 degrees or 5 pi thirds. So that equation gives me 2 options. But over here, the other thing that would work is if the cosine was negative 1. And so I'm looking for an x coordinate of negative 1, which only happens one place on the circle. So another option is 180 degrees or pi. So these are all the answers that would make that initial statement true. Look how smart you are. All right, let's keep going. This looks really familiar, very similar to that. I'm over here thinking, what would 2y squared minus y minus 1? So the only difference is that this time I'm dealing in signs and that this is negative. So when I go to set up my factors equal to 0, I'll have a 2 sign and a 1 sign to get my 2 sine x. I'll get a 1 and a 1, but in order to have a negative in the middle, I'll need the 2 sine x to be negative and the 1 sine x to be positive. So again, that means this factor can equal 0 or this factor can equal 0. Solving those to get the trig part alone, I get this. Over here, I'm going to take away that 1 and divide by 2. So I get this. These are not my answers, though, because now I go to my unit circle to see where are those things true. Where is the sign value -1/2? So again, that's my y coordinate. So my y coordinate is a -1/2 right here at 330, which is 11 pi 6. I'm also going to have a -1/2 sign or y coordinate here at 210. So 210 degrees or 7 pi over 6 works. And then from this one, where is the y value going to equal a +1? Well, the y value equals +1 right up here at the top. So my other option is 90 degrees or pi halves. So those are my answers for number 3. You're probably an expert, but if not, we'll keep going just in case. Really similar to question number 1, and you want to start looking for those similarities to say, oh, I've done this before. I'm going to add the 1 over. Because I just have a tangent squared, no plane tangent, I can square root both sides. So then the tangent of x will be plus or minus 1, and it is unit circle time. So where is the tangent plus or minus 1? Well, in these corners, all these middle marks have a tangent value, of positive or -1. And again, the more I can learn the patterns of the unit circle, the easier that is for me. So that means that my x can be 45 degrees. It can be over here at 135 degrees, or 3 pi fourths. It can be down in this corner at 225 degrees, or 5 pi fourths. And then lastly, over here at 315, which is 7 pi fourths. All right. So these are going to be my options. Grand finale, bottom row. Just have a cosine squared, so I'll be using plus or minus square root again. But first I need to get rid of that 4. So I'm going to divide that to the other side. And you always want to leave it as a fraction. You do not want to be doing decimals. So I'm going to now square root both sides, introducing a plus or minus. That's easy to forget. So the cosine of x is going to be positive or negative. Now the square root of 1 is 1 and the square root of 4 is 2. So this one comes out nice and pretty. And now it's unit circle time. I'm looking for any place where my cosine, aka x, is going to have a value of either positive or -1/2. So as I cruise around here, this is the first spot where I see a cosine value of 1/2. So my first option is 60 degrees or pi thirds. I also have a cosine of -1/2 here as I go around. So then my second option is 120 degrees or 2 pi thirds. Dropping down to quadrant 3, I have a cosine of -1/2 right here at 240. So 240 or 4 pi thirds is going to work. And then lastly, in quadrant 4, this spot right here has a an x coordinate or cosine value of 1/2 as well. So my final answer is 300 degrees or 5 pi thirds. So these are my options for this lovely number. And last, I'm going to try to get my sign alone. It's not squared, so I won't have to do square root. I won't have to do factoring. I'm just going to do good old algebra. So my first big move is going to be to take away that 3 to the other side and end up with a -1. My next move is going to be to divide the root 2 over. So that requires me to rationalize because everyone in the world knows you can't have a square root on the bottom. So I get -√2 over regular 2, and this is not a plus minus because I didn't do any square rooting in this problem. There just was a square root, but I didn't introduce the square root sign. So it's unit circle time once again. I'm looking for the sign, which is my y coordinate, to equal -√2 over 2. So where does that happen? Well, the sign equals √2 over 2 there, but I need it to be negative. So I'm going to go over here. Still positive. Well, sign is y, so it makes sense that it has to be down at the bottom. And so this is the first spot that I have a y coordinate or sign value of -√2 over 2. and that is located at 225 or 5 pi fourths. And then also over here, I have a y or sine value of negative root 2 over 2, and that's at 315 degrees, 7 pi over 4. So these are going to go a lot more quickly if you're awesome at algebra, which you mostly are, and also if you have done the Go formatives from last week and really feel comfortable finding things on the unit circle quickly. That'll make your life a lot easier. All right. Enjoy worksheet number 2, my friends, and make sure you're reaching out if you have any questions. Peace out.